Welcome back, everybody, to the Nick Saban Show, presented by Alpha Insurance. I'm Chris Stewart, filling in for Eli Gold. Lauren Sisler of ESPN and the SEC Network is our media guest. She will be part of the broadcast crew, along with Mike Morgan and Dave Steckel for the Tide and the Governors of Austin Peay this weekend. We've told you their roles. You're probably aware of the role of the next individual that we welcome to the show. He'll be our head coach on Saturday, and we are so glad that he is. Please welcome Coach Nick Saban to the stage. Coach, always good to see you, sir.
Good to be here. How's everybody?
We're good.
Yeah.
Had a good week, I hope?
Yeah, well, you like to build on the way the team played in the second half, kind of recapture the culture of how you compete in a game and play to win and have fun and be excited when you do it. So, hopefully we can build on that. I kind of told the players on Monday, I said, if anybody can come to practice this week and watch you practice and watch you prepare for this game and know who you're playing against, that's an indictment on who you are. So you should want to be the best that you can be regardless of the circumstance, regardless of who we're playing. You don't need some bad thing to happen. You don't need to get humiliated to get motivated. Why can't we start fast, play for 60 minutes in the game, and feel good about it, just like you felt good about how you played in the second half of, last week's game. So they've responded pretty well to it. We got some guys banged up, but this will be a good opportunity for some other guys to get a chance to play as well.
And talking specifically about the Bama standard and reestablishing this identity, how did you really see the guys respond last week and coming into this week?
Well, I think that our guys played to win. They played to win. They competed in the game. They played hard. They played physical. They played with toughness. And the whole sort of game changed, sometime in the third quarter. We started winning the line of scrimmage. We started knocking people back. Runners started getting extra yards after contact. We started tackling better on defense. After getting behind 17-7 in the game, they only scored 7 more points than we scored to get to 30. So the whole sort of dynamic of the game, who was dominating the game, who was giving better effort, who was playing with more discipline, who was playing with more toughness, kind of changed in the game. And those are the kind of intangibles that make the culture what it is. It's not what you say, it's what you do. What I used to say all the time, what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say. Well, that's what you got to do on the field.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
I do think that, and I've talked about this before, that, our team was affected by external factors this year probably more than any other team. Maybe created by the expectations of the preseason, Bryce, Will Anderson coming back and whatever. And I think they actually, even though we're so process-oriented in terms of, what we try to teach our guys that they need to do so they can get the outcome that they want, I think it's what you get attached to. You get attached to process, you do the things you need to do so that you can be successful, or you get attached to outcomes, and now you create a lot of anxiety when things aren't going like you want them to, so that you get the result that you want. So, and I think that affected the players, and I think finally, I didn't see that, last week, and I think that's a good thing. So, but, it's also the former players. When former players come back to me, it hurts my heart. And I told the players this, so I'm not speaking out of school, that anybody that's ever played here in this culture and on this team would think that anybody on this team is not playing to that culture and to that standard. That really breaks my heart because I'm responsible for that. And I want all the players to feel the responsibility that goes with that in terms of who we are at Alabama, how we play, what we do, and how we do things. So we're working on it.
Coach, that was the first question brought to us by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or visit al811.com. And while that was the first question, we get one from the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, and you know who that is from.
Pee-wee.
I'll let you say hello to the man. Go ahead, Coach.
Pee-wee.
Yes, sir.
What's
How are
going
you?
on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well, Coach. Coach, y'all have addressed, the conversation that you had on the sideline during the game last week and the response that the team has had. I was just wondering, number one, what's the condition of Jahmyr Gibbs? I know he twisted up an ankle last week. I was wondering how he was progressing on that. And then how has the offensive line responded this week after being able to, like you said, play to win and was able to do what we want to do in the second half?
Yeah, well, they did a nice job in the second half. We tried to control the line of scrimmage, and but you got to build on that. You got to have a vision for what you want to do and who you want to be, and you got to go verify it every time you play that you can do that. So consistency and performance define success. So this team plays a little different kind of defense. They play, we call it mint, but it's like a 3-3 stack type of thing, which is a little different, but it's going to be challenging for them. And but I haven't been disappointed in the way they responded this week. But you got to do it when the game comes, man. You prepare yourself all week in practice, so when you get to the game, you practice it so much you can't. People think you just practice something until you get it right. You really got to practice it until you can't get it wrong. And then when you go to the game, you got confidence in it, and you're not even thinking about it, and you know exactly fundamentally how you got to go about doing what you got to do to get the job done. So we didn't start out the game very well. The last couple games, look, the way I grade plays is it's 1st and 10. If we don't make it 2nd and 6 or less than that, that wasn't a successful play. I don't care if it's a run, a pass, it doesn't matter. If it's 3rd down and 10, it's not a successful play unless we gain 10 yards. So when you grade the plays that way and we're not having successful plays, then you really have to evaluate, A, how are you practicing, B, how are you presenting it, how are the players taking it to the field, and then as we play in the game, we seem to play better. But we've gotten behind in several games, and sometimes that gets hard to overcome. So we have to do it from start to finish, and we got to do it right off the bat. And how the offensive line, look, there's certain parts of your team that kind of makes the team be physical, be aggressive, be more dominant in terms of how they attack. You can do it on special teams, and you can do it on the offensive and defensive lines. Those are the two places where you have the best chance to establish the culture, of your team, and how tough you are, how physical you are, how you knock the other team back. So, and that's what we got to do a better job of on a more consistent basis.
Coach, let's go back to the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. And again, for our listeners, 877-202-BAMA is the number to call if you'd like to be a part of the program. Greg's in San Diego, California. How you doing, Greg?
Good. Thank you for taking my question, Coach.
How you doing, Greg?
I think everybody's still – well, thank you, sir. I think everyone's still dialed in for the rest of this season, but I couldn't help but wonder, have you had any thoughts about the 12-team playoff and the opportunity to play another team for a second time? It happens all the time in the NFL, not so much in college. And I know you take it week to week. I was just curious if you had any time where you allowed yourself to think about 12-team playoffs and playing another team for a second time in the same year, if that excited you. It doesn't seem like you get to do that much in your career. And
we did it last
sir.
year. We played Georgia twice, two out of 3 games.
Yeah, true.
No, I get it. Look, I don't think the philosophy of all this is about playing the same team twice. For a long time, and people have heard me talk about this before, so I don't want to bore anybody with the details, but to answer your question is, for a long time, I really wasn't for the playoffs. When we had a 2-team playoff, they picked the best 2 teams. You played for the national championship. I thought that was a good thing. And part of the reason for that was, bowl games have always been a real tradition of college football. And it provided a lot of positive self-gratification for a lot of teams who had good seasons, maybe didn't win the championship or whatever, but got to go to the Sugar Bowl or the Orange Bowl, or even the Liberty Bowl or whatever bowl it was that they got to go to. It was a real positive for their team, their players, for all the hard work that they'd done and all that. And that's what made college football a little bit different than every other sport, because you're playing for a championship. So when we started the 4-team playoff, I was one of the first to say, this is a good thing, but it's going to diminish the importance of bowl games. So what has happened now? If you're not in the playoffs, half your team doesn't want to play in the bowl game. anybody that's got a chance to go out for the draft, anybody that wants thinking about transferring or whatever. And now you got name, image, and likeness, so maybe you ought to get in the portal and see how much money you can get from some other team. So there's all these dynamics that are created that bowl games sort of, the importance got diminished. So in the last few years, I am actually an advocate of having a bigger playoff. Because if you have a bigger playoff, you have more fan interest, because the only fan interest now is in the playoffs. All right, so if you have a 4-team playoff, so you got 7 or 8 teams that still have a chance to get in the playoffs, so their fan base is still excited about what's going on, and everybody else is a little disappointed. So if you have a 12-team playoff, we'd probably have 20 to 25 teams that would still have a chance to get in a 12-team playoff. Like we would have a chance to get in a 12-team playoff, even though we've had a couple disappointing losses. And I think there would be a lot more fan interest on a national basis for a lot more teams. So I'm actually for that. Now, that will completely diminish bowl games, and hopefully some kind of way we can make the bowl games a part of this playoff system so that we don't diminish some of the bowl games and the traditions that, go with those bowl games. So I'm with you on that, not because I want to play another team twice. I don't mind doing that. I was in the NFL for 8 years, and we played everybody in our division twice. One year we played the Pittsburgh Steelers 3 times. We lost to them twice in the regular season, and we lost to them in the playoffs. We only lost 5 games. We lost 3 times to the Steelers. So I know about playing the same team twice. But anyway, so that wouldn't be the reason for it. It would probably happen some, but that would be okay. I don't think that's a problem.
Lauren, what you got for us?
So speaking on fan interest, we know how much you love oatmeal cream pies. And before the season, I asked you about the oatmeal cream pie ice cream. You said one of your players had given you some. You threw it in the freezer. You hadn't gotten around to eating it. Have you given it a try yet?
I took 1 bite.
And?
I'm back to my little regular Debbie.
So not as enjoyable as you had hoped or thought it would be?
It was okay, but I mean, it's hard, when the standard is up here, it's kind of hard.
It's all about the standard.
You got to go with the OG, the original, right?
That's right.
The OG, Little Debbie.
Good stuff. All right. When we come back, we'll have more with the OG himself. We will also take more of your calls at 877-202-BAMA. Stay with us. We're back with more of the Nick Saban Show here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Young, looking, throwing, caught, touchdown. Cameron Latu makes the grab in traffic, 8 yards. Alabama trying to claw their way back. The Tide pulls to within 4.
That's a refreshing Bama highlight presented by Yellowhammer Brewing Company, brewed locally in Alabama and served to fans across the Southeast. Welcome back, everybody. It's Hey Coach and the Nick Saban Show. It is presented by our friends at Alpha, and we're glad to have you with us here on the show. And glad to have Lauren Sisler from ESPN and the SEC Network. She will be on the call this weekend as the Crimson Tide is in action against Austin Peay. The Governor's coming to town for an 11 a.m. kick. We'll be on the air beginning at 8 a.m. with pregame coverage. That's after we have an 8 p.m. tip-off for Alabama basketball on Friday night. We'll actually have pregame coverage starting at 7 for hoops, tip-off at 8, and then just stay with us. We may just go all night long with the broadcast and continue on with kickoff set for 11 for football on Saturday. Lauren Sisler, our media guest from the SEC Network and ESPN. Got another one for Coach?
Yeah, Coach. Bryce Young wins the most coveted award in college football a year ago, but continues to show development and growth. Where have you seen the most growth from him this season?
I think probably in leadership. And, Bryce has done a really good job of trying to get the other players on our team to sort of play to the standard. But I think that really got affected a little bit when from his standpoint, because he still did a really good job. But the development of our offense and how our offense was able to grow and improve when Bryce basically got hurt at Arkansas and, missed a game but couldn't really practice, with the other players, especially in the passing game. So I think we didn't, we went through about a month there where we didn't make the kind of progress that you'd like to make, so you were peaking at the right time, of the year. But his leadership has really been something that I don't think originally was a natural thing for him because he's such a good person. Everybody likes him. And, sometimes when you're a leader, you can't really care too much about what everybody thinks of you. You just try to get them to do what's right. Sometimes people don't like that. I think they respect it. I think he's learned how to do that really, really well, and I think it's had a huge impact on our team.
Well, and I think back to an instance back when we did your spring game 2 years ago, and we brought him into the media room, and he was with two other players, and we were kind of firing questions at the group, and he sort of deferred to those guys first. Let them go first. I know I'm the quarterback of the team, but I want these guys to have a voice. So that really impressed me, just how his demeanor was and how he wanted those guys to speak up and have that opportunity.
Well, I think that that's a part of his respectful sort of personality and upbringing, which having respect for other people and compassion for other people is one of the most important things you can have. But I think he's kind of learned that, when you play quarterback, it's probably one of the most difficult positions in all of sports to play well if the people around you don't play well. And I think he's learned that. That's a lesson that I try to teach him early on, that, you taking some responsibility for helping these guys do the things they need to do so they can play consistently well around you is actually going to enhance your chances of being successful as well, because you need them to do that. If the left tackle can't block the right end and you're getting harassed all day, it's going to be hard for you to be successful. If the receivers don't do things the right way, it's going to be hard for you to be successful. So not to take some responsibility for that is something that will not be helpful to you in the future. And he grabbed a hold of that, and he's been really, really good at trying to help other players do the things they need to do to be successful as well.
Coach, this gentleman right here in front has a question for you.
Yeah, Coach, I was just wondering kind of on an 11 a.m. kick, a lot of people worry about kind of the preparations going up to it, but I'm kind of curious to how's your day happen after the 11 a.m. kick? Does that kind of benefit you more time with the recruits? Kind of how do you spend the back half of your day, watching football or spending more time with recruits, and kind of how you go about an 11 a.m. kick?
Well, we don't have any official visits this weekend, so we'll have some guys that visit unofficially. So it does give a little bit more time to do those types of things. But really, if we don't have official visits, there's nothing really you can do in recruiting because people aren't here. You can't go see them. We all watch football. Like, I don't get enough of it watching it from, 7 in the morning until 10 o'clock at night every day. But everybody's a football fan. Everybody enjoys college football. So we get a little bit more time to see some of the other games, see how the other teams are doing. But we do have recruits there, but they're on unofficial visits, and we will spend a little bit more time with them after the game, which typically we don't have a lot of time to do, especially when you play night games, because they all got to get going to wherever they're going. And a lot of the good players that we've recruited are in the playoffs, so they have a tough time coming to games, this time of year.
Thank you, sir.
So there's really no advantage of playing at 11 o'clock, other than you got to get up early. When you get out of bed and your feet hit the ground, you better be ready to go. That's players and coaches alike. So,
Coach, a quick follow-up to that. I want to know how Nick Saban watches college football when it's obviously not Alabama playing. I mean, afterwards, is you home with Miss Terry?
I really have a hard time enjoying the game, to be honest with you, when I watch it, because I find myself, because all the time that I spend, whether it's watching a defensive team for our offensive preparation or the other team's offense for the defense's preparation. And what you're constantly looking for is, what are the issues? What causes problems? What kind of adjustments do you have to make if we were playing against that? That's all I do. I got like 200 pages of formations that I go through on Sunday, that are matched up with the film. So, and I write comments on every page about what kind of adjustments do we want to play? What do we want to do against, this formation and that formation? And how do we want to adjust to these things? And what do we not want to do, against certain formations? So, when I watch a game on TV, I'm watching and I'm saying, well, how would we play that play? What would we do if they were in that formation and did that? And that's, I might as well go back to work.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not really enjoyable. And then I find myself, like at the end of the game, saying, why didn't they call timeout? He's letting the other team. I mean, I'm like managing the game like we're playing the game. So I'm like, what can we watch on Netflix?
Got it covered next. All right, Coach. The first question from our Nick Saban Show thread at AL.com is from Jerry in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. Jerry says, "Hey, Coach, I thought the defense played well, especially in the second half against Ole Miss. What are some areas on defense that we still need to improve on as we close out the regular season?"
Well, I think the biggest thing with our defense is when we're all on the same page and we communicate well and we don't make mental errors. And I mean, it is really challenging in this day and age of football with all the motion adjustments that you have to make, formation into the boundary. I mean, everybody, these offensive coaches have really done a great job of developing this spread scheme where, you know, you're defending 53 yards wide and 100 yards deep, so it's vertical and horizontal. You know, everything used to be in a smaller box. So everybody's more spread out. And when that happens, if you make a mental error and you get one guy out of position, you know, there's a lot of grass out there that, just like the play that LSU scored on in the first play of overtime. I mean, we're in a basic coverage. The star man goes in motion. We're supposed to just sit there and play what we were playing, and they rotate. So when the quarterback keeps the ball, there's not enough guys there. So you make one mistake like that, and you're in trouble. And there's a lot of multiples to what you have to adjust to and what you have to do. And when we are on the same page and when we get guys communicating and playing well together, we've played pretty well. Most of the time when we have issues, it comes down to two things: mental errors or missed tackles. And if you watch those two things, and most people don't know when we make a mental error, but I do, and when we don't tackle well, especially in space, those are the biggest problems. But I tell you what, the 4 plays when Ole Miss got the ball on the 15-yard line last week, they played those 4 plays really good. You know, pressured the quarterback, got a couple sacks, had really good coverage down the field. And, you know, so we did the things we needed to do to win the game in those situations. But there have been other times this year in critical situations we haven't done that.
I don't know how many times I called Byron Young's name on the radio broadcast.
He played.
But it was a bunch. It was great, wasn't he?
Yeah, he played great. He really did. You know, he's from Mississippi, and he played great. You know, I tell you, I got to tell you, when these guys have these kind of games, the first thing that comes in my mind is when I went to their home visit.
Right.
You know, and his mother's a great lady, and it was like Thanksgiving, you know, on the home visit.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking I'm going there to try to talk this guy into coming to Alabama. That mama was doing nothing but making sure everybody had enough to eat and fed good, and the whole family was there. You know, you're talking about 25 people. This wasn't like, you know, just me and mom and dad and Byron. It was, you know, like a wedding. So I always remember that, you know, when guys do well, the first thing that pops into my head is home visit.
Yeah.
Do you remember any specific food from that visit that?
Yeah, fried
good?
chicken. You better believe it. It was good, too.
Coach, let's go to Florence. Harrison, you're on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline with Coach Nick Saban.
Good evening, Chris. Coach, it's good to be on the show again. I tried to call last week, and I didn't get through. I know there was a lot going on. How you doing tonight?
Doing good, thank you. How are you?
Doing great. I just had a quick question about a pregame tradition that I've seen you do numerous times on social media. I've seen videos and pictures on Facebook and other outlets of when you get to the stadium, regardless of where it is, you have your suit on and you take a pregame lap around the field. My question is, how did that kind of tradition come about for you, and what does that do for your mindset going into the game?
Yeah. Well, you know, there's a purpose to that. You know, I usually have my policemen are with me, and also our equipment man always is walking with me. So the number one thing is, what's the field condition? If, you know, the field's not in good shape or whatever. Second thing is are there wind conditions out there? And then I'm looking at the stadium to see how the stadium's set up. Where are the shot clocks? You know, the 40-second clocks. You know, because every stadium is different now with all these, you know, big screen TVs and all the stuff they have in them. So I'm trying to just get myself oriented. So it started doing it on the road, but then, you know, I kind of just made it a tradition to do it everywhere and kind of get you in the mindset of, okay, we're at the game, we're ready to go. Here's the conditions we're going to have to play in. Let's go get ready to play. And sometimes you got to get the players ready to accept that as well. You know, if it's cold out, it's going to be cold in the game. It was cold at the game the other night. You know, I mean, going to fight in the North Atlantic, got to train in the North Atlantic, got to be ready to go.
I got to tell you, when you make that lap, it reminds me of when I was a child and going to Alabama games or went to my very first one. Coach Bryant used to do that as well.
Oh, he did?
He made the same lap, just like you do. And it was.
Well, the only thing I ever see is all the pictures of him leaning on the goalpost. Now, I never got.
That was during warm-ups. That's during warm-ups.
Most of the time with a cigarette.
That's right. That's exactly right. But he would make that same lap like you do. And I remember being in a stadium the first time, seeing that as a 10-year-old boy, and how cool that was. And I got to tell you, it's even cooler now as a 52-year-old man, knowing that I get to interview that coach at Alabama when he comes back to the locker room and doing that interview. That's pretty special.
Yeah, well, it might be special for you, but it's not one of my favorite things.
My wife don't enjoy talking to me any more than you do, Coach. I just got news for you.
No, I'm just kidding, really.
No, you're not.
It's good for the fans. You ask good questions, but it's just it's really kind of like, you know, you're in this mindset of getting ready to play the game. So you just came out of a walkthrough at the hotel with the players, whether they made mistakes or things need to be corrected or you feel like they're not mentally where they need to be. So you got all these things running through your mind about playing the game, and then you're doing a TV interview. But there's a lot of things like that, like, you know, like I have to talk to recruits all day before a home game. Now, the guy asked if you play at 11 o'clock, what do you do afterwards? Well, when we play at 7 o'clock at night, I talk to them all day long before a game, because they get there early and you get to talk to guys all day long. So there's a lot of distractions that come, but when you take that walk, it's like, okay, that's done now. You know, now we can focus on what we got to do.
You want me to walk with you and interview you while we walk? Is that better?
No, I like my quiet time.
I figured. That's what I thought. We're back after this on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Young directing traffic. He'll bring Law in tight to the right side. He will look that direction. He will bounce to his right. He'll roll. He will pump fake. He'll throw it. Back of the end zone. Catch made. Brooks. Touchdown, Alabama.
This segment of the Nick Saban Show is brought to you by Coca-Cola Zero Sugar. Zero sugar and refreshingly delicious. Is Coca-Cola Zero Sugar the best Coke ever? We'll find out for yourself. Chris Stewart filling in for Eli Gold back here on the Nick Saban Show. Lauren Sisler from ESPN and the SEC Network is our media guest tonight. Of course, Coach Saban here on stage as we are at Baumhower's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. Coach, we've got another question from the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline. Jimmy is in Hoover. Jimmy, go ahead with your question for Coach Saban.
Hey, Coach.
Hi, Jimmy. How you doing?
Good. You may remember last week I called and commented on your actions in the post interviews and on the sideline, and I was excited to see you this past week. I believe it was around the third quarter. You were on the sidelines, and you were really going at the players really well. Can you actually tell me kind of what you said to them? Because it seemed like from then on we did like a 180, and it was just very impressive.
Well, I can tell you this. When I really got on them was when it was 4th and 1, and we went for it, and the center snapped the ball when he wasn't supposed to, and we got stopped, and they got the ball. I cannot tell you on this broadcast what I said during that time. But you know, most of the time during the game, I think that, you know, I try to get the players to and the approach last week was, this is personal. Do you guys understand? This is personal. Sometimes I don't think the players, they're on social media, they hear what other people say, but they don't really understand how personal it is. So I actually showed the players on Friday, when I talked to them. I showed them the stadium in Arkansas when there were 6 minutes to go in a game. There was nobody there. I showed them storming the field at Tennessee. I showed them storming the field at LSU. And I said, you guys were all there. How personal is this? All right, so your identity as a football team and a football player gets determined, and the Ole Miss, they're going to storm the field too, because it's personal to those people, because that's how bad they want to beat Alabama. And I don't think you guys really kind of understand that. And you're going to have to learn how to respond to that if we're going to be able to do the things we need to do to be successful when we have to play these road games against these good teams. And I think they responded pretty well in the game, but we did not start out very well in the game on offense. And that play was kind of the culmination for me on 4th and 1 when we didn't even give ourselves a chance because of miscommunication. And again, this is all about mental errors. And those are the things that I think you really can't tolerate. So, and I think we played a little better after that. But I think most of the time when I'm coaching players on the sidelines, it's more encouraging, correction. Most of the time, they want to do it more than you want them to do it. And nobody feels worse about messing up than they do. We want to try to avoid that as coaches as much as we can, and they need to understand the importance of preparation so that doesn't happen. But at the same time, I think sometimes people don't appreciate how hard these guys work, how much they do, how much they put into it, and how bad they want to get it done. And they don't want to disappoint you, I can promise you that, because they want to create value for Alabama. They want to create value for themselves, their future, and our team. And when you're in a locker room after the game, you see how sad they are. You also see how happy they are when they win a game like they did last week. So, and that's really what keeps you rolling, is that joy that they feel when they've gone out there and played hard, had fun, done well enough, competed their tail off, and had success. And I think that was really important for our team last week.
Going along with that, that's one thing people always say, who are you pulling for? Well, obviously, as a media member, unbiased here, but I always say it's so difficult to be in a locker room after a game when a game is lost and watching these men, these young men, and the emotion that they feel, but then seeing the joy. So you get to see both sides of it. And on the topic of distractions, you're really good at limiting distractions. Obviously, staying off Twitter is probably one of those that helps you to limit those distractions. What do you do, and what advice do you pass along to your players to kind of keep that outside noise contained?
I obviously don't do as well as I need to because I think too many guys are affected by, what other people think. And I think a lot of these guys are on social media a lot. They get a lot of positive or negative self-gratification from what other people think. And they get it on the internet. I'm not on the internet, so I don't want to hear what people have to say. I don't care what anybody has to say about anything, because I want to be able to self-assess myself in terms of this is the vision, this is the goal, this is what we want to accomplish, this is what we need to do it, and then stay focused on what we need to do to be able to get it done. I don't want to be distracted by what somebody else thinks or what they think you should have done, which creates a lot of self-doubt. So, and I think ability to be able to self-assess is really important to being able to improve, all right? Because that means you have, a positive sort of mindset about what you want to accomplish and what you want to do, what you're willing to do to get it done, and you're not worried about all these other things, because then you're kind of motivated from within rather than externally by what other people think. That's kind of what I was talking about, when I said, does somebody have to get humiliated before they get motivated? Mm-hmm. And there are lots of people who have negative thoughts, and something has to go bad for them to want to change and do things the right way. And it's kind of human nature, because we all just kind of want to survive. It's kind of special to be a champion or do something really well or really, invest in something. It's not a sacrifice. It's an investment in your future. It's an investment in what you want to accomplish and what you want to do. and you feel really good about it. And we're all trying to gain self-respect some kind of way. Everybody does it a little bit different. And if you have to be humiliated to get motivated, it's happened sometimes in practice. You know, one team, one side of the ball will be dominating the other side of the team. They start getting chippy with the other side. The other side then comes back and they start playing better. And I say to them, why did these guys have to dog you for you to start playing good? You had to get humiliated before you could start playing good. I mean, that's external motivation. You're depending on somebody else to upset you so that you can go do what you should have been doing to start with, because it benefits you to do it the right way, or you shouldn't even be out here. And I don't care what it is you choose to do in your life. It's the same thing. It's a life lesson. You should not have to be humiliated to want to do things the best that you could do them. That means you're motivated from within, not from without. But I'm going to tell you what, the noise out there, the expectations out there, things that people say, it does affect a lot of young people, and it affects some of our players. And look, we do everything that I possibly can to get them not to be affected by those things, but I can honestly say I know a lot of them are.
Have you ever put up any guardrails in terms of the use of social media? Tried to maybe limit that use? I know you can only do so much with teenagers, but...
Well, we monitor, and the issue is not what our players put out, it's what other people say about them. Mm-hmm. That's the issue. We can't control that. And I don't think that I would have very many players that want to come play at Alabama if I said you couldn't have a phone and you couldn't be on the internet. Who would play? I mean, most of them are running into the wall looking at the phone now, so you're going to take that away from them.
Hey, well, I guess, did you get rid of the flip phone? Have you upgraded to the iPhone?
I don't know. What kind of phone do I have? I do have an iPhone. I can actually.
Just Terry says it's an iPhone.
I've actually gotten to where I can text at least one line.
Oh, good.
Nice.
Wow.
Very nice.
It takes a while, but I can get it.
We'll let you send a text as we take a break here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Dart with Judkins in the backfield with him. Gets the snap. Looking, firing, up in the air, knocked away, incomplete. Brian Branch knocked it away from Mingo, and Alabama turns away the Rebels.
Welcome back, everybody, to more of the Nick Saban Show here at Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Tuscaloosa. Chris Stewart filling in for Eli. Lauren Sisler from ESPN of the SEC Network is our media guest here with Coach Saban. And, Coach, our second question from the Nick Saban Show thread at AL.com is from Alice in Theodore, Alabama. She says, hey, Coach, is the early signing date in December a positive in that you can enroll more kids at Alabama early for spring semester?
Well, I think the trend in guys coming into school at mid-year probably started even before the early signing date. But what the early signing date has done is change the whole recruiting calendar, because, you know, we all said when we moved from the first Wednesday in February to December that date would become the signing date. You know, now 95% of the players sign on December 22nd, whether they're going to be mid-year guys or not. All right, the one thing that it has done is, administratively, if you had someone who was going to come in at mid-year, you didn't know until they enrolled in school whether they're going to be there or not, because there was nothing, they couldn't sign early. So that's a positive, the early signing period. But because of the early signing period, the evaluation period moved up. Then they changed the recruiting calendar where guys could visit in the summertime, all right, which a thing that was sort of perpetuated by a lot of schools up north who wanted to recruit guys in the south so they could visit when the weather wasn't so bad. So now we have probably every weekend in June where we have official visits. Well, we never ever had that before. People always visited during the season, they visited in December, and then they visited in January, because the whole calendar was based on February. Now the whole calendar is based on December. So guys are going to visit either during the season or they're going to visit in summertime. So there's good and bad in it. I think in football, though, it's a disadvantage for some players that develop late because what this has also required us to do is we have to evaluate players when they're sophomores and juniors. And, football is a developmental game. All right, so if you remember when you were a sophomore, a lot of folks out there, and how much you matured and how much you physically developed from the time you were a sophomore to when you were a senior in high school. And some people do it when they're in college even, later than that. Now we have to make decisions on guys when they're sophomores and juniors, whether we can recruit them and play for them in Alabama. Well, some guys that's easy to do, but a lot of guys, they're not fully developed yet. So they don't get the same opportunity because by the time they're seniors, they may be better players than the guys that you took that were more developed as juniors, but they don't have an opportunity because you already filled up at that position. Right. So there's good and bad in it. But me personally, I liked it when it was the old way. That gave you more time to develop relationships, with players, and it gave you more time to evaluate them, and they actually could play their senior year without maybe having the pressure of making a decision and signing someplace right after the season.
Coach, time for you to give us the final word, and as always, that final word is presented by Mercedes-Benz.
Well, I think the big thing that is important for our team right now is that we recapture the culture of what this team has always been, how we've always played for years here, the kind of toughness we play with, the kind of discipline that we play with, the way we compete. Bo Scarborough was here today, and he put his finger on the table and said, when we played here, we were making sure that the other team, when the game was over, would say, we never want to play them again. You guys remember everything that you ever taught them. And that's the kind of culture that we want to try to recreate. And I think that's something that got started a little bit last week, but it's something that we've tried to build all year long. We started the season that way. We kind of lost it. Hopefully we can regain it and start rebuilding that for the future and the way we play. And I don't care who we're playing against. It's like I said in the beginning of the show. If anybody can tell who we're playing this week by how you practice this week, something wrong with you. That's not what it's all about. It's how well do you play, how well do we recapture the culture of what this program has always been about and the expectation of what it's been about. And I don't want any former player ever coming to me saying, you guys are not what they expect you to be. Because they established the culture, whether it was Julio Jones and Mark Ingram and that whole group and all these guys, and they have lots of pride in that. All right? And we want our team to be the same way. And I think the dynamics of college football has changed. It's more challenging to do that because there's more opportunities for guys to make changes, whether it's transfer, whether it's name, image, and likeness, whatever it is. They have more choices than they used to. But we have to still get them committed to doing things to a certain standard because that creates value for them. It creates value for us, and it's the kind of program that we want to represent this university and the tradition of this university, and that's what we got to build on for this game and the rest of the season.
Coach, always appreciate the time. Thank you so very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Coach Nick Saban, presented by Alpha Insurance. For auto, home, and life insurance, call Alpha.